Hello, how's it going? I'm here now to continue talking about, as Christians, about how can we continue to run the race so we can earn a crown. Now, the thing is we know that everything we do, it's leading up to something, and the Bible tells us that we as Christians, we're running a race, and we're told that we need to throw off anything that's going to hinder us from running that race. But we're running that race so we can earn a crown, so that way when we get to heaven and we see Jesus, he's going to say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant," and give us a crown. And this is something that we want to work for. But the thing is I don't know, is everyone going to get a crown? Maybe some Christians won't. Maybe they're going to get there and Jesus is going to say, "Well, you didn't do anything for me. You just lived for yourself." And so we need to learn, okay, how can we run this race so we can get that crown? And so here we learn in Hebrews 12, so I'll just quickly read Hebrews 12 verses 1, and then we're going to start trying to think about how can we make sure we can run this race well. So Hebrews 12 verse 1, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders, the sin that so easily entangles." And so we see here that the first thing we need to do to help us to run this race is we need to throw off anything that hinders us. Now the question is, what is going to hinder us? What things can we consider to be something that's going to slow us down? How can we work that out? Well, the first place I want to look to give us some ideas of what these could be is to jump over to Genesis chapter 4. I'm going to read verses 20 to 22. Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who play the harp and the flute. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Now, at first you might be thinking, why these verses, and why are they even in the Bible? What are they trying to tell us? And you might think at first, oh well, they're telling us that people back then, before the flood, were very smart. They could make things. They could play music. They weren't cavemen. They weren't stupid. They knew how to do things, and that's true. They were very smart. But that's not exactly what it's telling us, because we need to look at who are these people. And well, these people are the children of Cain. And well, who's Cain? He's the guy who killed his own brother. He's the guy who doesn't like God. And so God has cursed him and made him someone who wanders the earth. He's someone who's going away from God. He's not going closer to God. He's going away from God. And his children are doing the same. They're thinking, well, we don't care about God, so we're not going to give any time to God. So instead we're giving time to having livestock and for making music and making new things. We're spending our time wasting it. So we are so busy that we have no time for God. And so this can apply to us into the type of things that can hinder us. Like the first guy who's living in tents and who's got livestock. This guy is like people who are always traveling. They're always going from place to place, and they have no time for God because they just want to go from here to there. And it's also like people who always want to go and just buy new things, to trade, to buy houses, to sell houses. These people, again, they don't have time for God because they're too busy building up wealth and just traveling and just, which happens now. And also we see that that the guy who's playing like songs and making music, it's a lot like now. We have people who are so saturated in music, they don't have time for God. They just spend time writing songs, and our culture is got so much music and songs that people just aren't spending time with God. They come home and they just listen to music or write music, and we got so much famous people who sing songs, and it's all just distracting us from God. I mean, in the end, these things aren't bad of themselves, but if you just live for them, they can just take up so much time, and then there's no time for God. And it's the same thing with the guy who's making new tools out of bronze and iron. It's like now we have new phones, we can buy new phones, and you got those people who want to always have the new thing. They want to get a new car. And again, it's distracting us from God. It's taking away time from God. So how can we know what things hinder us? Well, it's things that are taking too much time out of our lives. They're not bad things. A lot of these things, they're not sin, but they're wasting time. And so we just got to ask ourselves, how much time are we spending in something? If we're spending 3 hours every week watching a movie, but we're barely spending 5 minutes with God every day, how does that work out? Like we need to think, how are we using our time? Are we wasting it? Are we wasting our time? Are we so distracted that we have no time for God? Just like these people before the flood. That's why God flooded the world, because they didn't have time for God. And then therefore they kept on sinning and doing evil. And then the other question is, how can we work out whether something is going to hinder us? So we know, okay, if it's taking up too much time, but the other thing is it sin? So we know that we're told to throw off in Hebrews 12 all the sin that so easily entangles. So again, if we're sinning, if we're doing things we know we shouldn't do, we need to stop that. And this is the same thing with if we're watching movies or reading a book or doing these different things which in themselves may not be sin, but sometimes they are sin. If we're watching a movie that has sinful things, a lot of violence and blood and sex and swearing and witchcraft, then these things are sinful. If we're watching a movie like this, we as Christians should not be watching that. So then we know straight away, all these things that have sinful stuff, we shouldn't even be touching. But now, all of these things that aren't sin, we need to be asking ourselves, are they growing us in Christ? Yeah, they're not sinful, but are we growing? Are we knowing Jesus by doing this thing? If I watch this movie, it's not a sinful movie, but if I watch it, do I get closer to Jesus? If not, then perhaps it's a waste of my time. Perhaps I shouldn't be doing it. And so we need to ask ourselves, are the things that we are doing, is it sin? If so, stop it. If it's not sin, we need to ask ourselves, are we wasting too much time on this and not spending time with God? And is it going to grow us and make us closer to God? And I think most of the time we can say it's not going to make us closer to God. So that's why, for me, I cancelled Netflix. I thought Netflix is a waste of time. It's just, you just get there, you think, oh, well, I'm paying for it, so I might as well watch a movie. Then you watch the movie and you think, it was just a waste of time. It wasn't really that good. And I think I could have been spending the time with God, but instead I wasted it watching this movie. So I thought, I'm going to cancel it. No more Netflix. Because it's a waste. It's a waste of time. So I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do to help yourself to get closer to God? Because in the end, Jesus tells us that the goal is to store up treasure in heaven. and which I think is also a really good point, because we know if we're going to run this race, we got to throw off everything that hinders, and we need to throw off the sin so we can run the race. Now the thing is a lot of us, we know what sin is. The Bible tells us. If you murder, if you lie, if you commit adultery, if you cover, all these different things that the Bible tells us. But there's also other sins which I think we forget. For example, being greedy. If we're greedy, that's a sin. And Jesus himself says, don't store up treasure on earth, but store up treasure in heaven. And so again, Jesus is commanding us, saying, if you're a Christian, don't live for this world. And the problem is we all, especially for me, I know we all live in a culture that loves to store up treasures on earth. We have so much stuff. We just have so much things. Everyone wants to have a car, and then everyone's got 2-3 cars, 2 houses, 3 houses. We got 3 TVs, so many things going on. We're just wasting so much time. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we accumulating too much? And so that's another thing we should think. If we have too much things, then we're not storing up in heaven, we're storing up on earth, which is a sin. We should stop that. So if we want to serve God, let's start having less. Let's start trying to live a more simple life. If you are someone who loves Jesus, let's start having less things. So I love you all, and I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.